What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today, as I always do on Wednesdays, to break down the running back starts and sits for the week. And it's pretty friggin' disgusting this week. Obviously, it is By-Mageddon. Welcome to By-Mageddon. The Buffalo Bills, Dallas Cowboys, Jacksonville Jaguars, Los Angeles Chargers, Minnesota Vikings, and Pittsburgh Steelers are all on bye this week. That means we will be without Zeke Elliott, J-Rob, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, and Zach Moss. So 5 top 15 guys, top 12 guys even, and one guy that's inside the top 20. So it is rough in the running back streets this week. If you guys enjoyed this video at any point, of course, like, comment, subscribe if you are new as well. We're going to hit the intro and then we're going to get right into this. So we're going to start with Thursday Night Football. The Broncos at the Browns. In this game at running back, pretty much everybody is worthy of flex consideration. Both of the running backs on the Browns side of things, and of course, both of the running backs on the Broncos side of things. For Denver, we saw a glimmer of hope for Javonte Williams. As you guys can see on the screen, he did actually have more carries than Melvin Gordon last week, and he had a pretty similar target share. Also got the short down and distance and long down and distance advantage as well. But this is still a committee for the time being, so we have to treat it as such. As much as I love Javonte Williams, he is on my home league team. I can't pretend that Melvin Gordon doesn't exist or that Melvin Gordon's going away at some point, because he is playing well and they still do clearly trust Melvin Gordon. The issue is that the Browns are giving up the second least adjusted fantasy points to the running back position and rank number 3 in rush defense DVOA. So this is a very tough matchup for both Gordon and for Javonte Williams. Both guys are inside my top 25 because I know what I'm getting out of these guys from a volume perspective, but that's simply due to injuries and buys. If we didn't have all these injuries, didn't have all these bye weeks, these guys would probably be sits for me outside of my top 25, outside of my top 30 even, if we did have more running backs available. But with injuries and buys, you're probably going to have to start these guys. But could be a down game for all those involved on the Broncos side of things. On the Browns side, we don't really know how this Browns backfield is going to shake out. Obviously, with Kareem Hunt now on IR, Nick Chubb is going to be out for this game, potentially back next week coming off of a 10-game rest, and he should be phenomenal whenever he does come back with Kareem Hunt out of the lineup. But my guess is that we're going to get a pseudo Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt with D'Ernest Johnson and Demetric Felton. As you guys can see on the screen, last week when Kareem Hunt was playing, they both had a 20% snap share, but D'Ernest Johnson was the primary guy getting carries. He got 5% of the carries to 0% for Demetric Felton, and Demetric Felton ran 28% of the routes and also saw a bit of short down and distance work as well. So Demetric Felton, I'm imagining, is going to be basically the new Kareem Hunt. D'Ernest Johnson, the new Nick Chubb. But of course, we don't really know how this backfield is going to shake out. If I had to choose one to start, I would start D'Ernest Johnson because I do expect them to get the bulk of the carries. This Broncos run defense has been susceptible to the run in the past. But Demetric Felton is also a guy that I'm willing to start. Both guys are inside my top 30. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably picked up either Felton or D'Ernest Johnson on waivers and are expecting to start him this week. Again, I would prefer to avoid this backfield because we don't know what the split's going to be. But if you need a start this week, I think both of them are startable. Now, moving on from the Thursday night game to the 1 p.m. games, we only have 6 1 p.m. games this week and 4 o'clock games. Of course, because of all the bye weeks, there's 6 teams on bye. There's 3 less games than there normally would be on the slate. But the Chiefs at Titans is the first 1 p.m. game that we're going to have. This game, start the big dog, of course. Derrick Henry decided to torch a 5-bet parlay for me because I took the under on his 100 rushing yards. And of course, he had to score a 75-yard rushing touchdown, deciding to torch my $400 that I would have won if he didn't do that. So Derrick Henry this week, he's set to smash. The Chiefs' run defense is absolutely terrible. I believe his FanDuel price right now is 11,000, which is like the highest I've seen since 2019 Christian McCaffrey. So Derrick Henry, of course, going to be a smash start, RB1 on the week. Darrell Williams, on the other hand, cover your ears if you're a Clyde Edwards-Helaire stan, because Darrell Williams got the role that we wish Clyde Edwards-Helaire was getting when he was healthy. And as you guys can see on the screen, 72% of the snaps, 84% of the rush attempts, 54% route participation, 100% short down and distance, all the goal line work, long down and distance, and 2-minute drill snaps. Darrell Williams is simply getting used more than Clyde Edwards-Helaire ever was. So Darrell Williams, to me, is inside my top 10 running backs on the week, which is absolutely gross given the fact that all these injuries and buys are a reason for that. But this is a solid matchup. 20th ranked rush defense DVOA are the Tennessee Titans. Darrell Williams is a guy that I'm absolutely starting this week if I have him, and hopefully he's a guy that you can lean on with all these bye weeks this week. So Washington football team at Green Bay Packers, the next game that we have to talk about here. Start Antonio Gibson if he plays. Start Aaron Jones, flex J.D. McKissic, and I think if you're desperate, you could probably throw A.J. Dillon into your lineup if you're dealing with a bunch of bye weeks this week. Aaron Jones is an auto start, of course. That's pretty easy. Like I said, if you're really screwed this week, you could do worse than A.J. Dillon. He's like my RB 34 or 33 on the week. This week on the Washington side of things, this is where a lot more complexity lies. Gibson's had virtually nothing come out aside from the fact that he had an MRI on Monday. So according to Jeff Mueller, who is a certified PT, his basic thoughts on this are that Antonio Gibson is awaiting results of the MRI done yesterday, which should already be announced if they were in fact negative or positive. So what he's thinking, the fact that the results haven't been announced is the fact that he's seeking secondary consult. And what that typically means when they go to see a second opinion is bad news. It's usually not good news when they go to see a second opinion. So he says brace for impact, but hope for the best. He also says best case scenario is that he plays week 7. It's pain management, similar to what we've seen from Antonio Gibson all season. But he does say this is unlikely because it seems like he did aggravate it to some degree. What he says is likely is that he misses week 7, probably week 8 as well, because they do have a bye week in week 9. That gives him 3 to 4 weeks to come back from his injury. Maybe he's put on short-term IR for 3 weeks. Who the hell knows? But that's basically what we're dealing with Antonio Gibson. If he does miss time, McKissic is an every week starter. As you guys can see on the screen, J.D. McKissic did start 2 games last year when Antonio Gibson was out of the lineup. And in those 2 games, he did see 12 carries and 7 targets. So great volume out of J.D. McKissic. He did perform well in fantasy when Gibson was out with a turf toe injury last year. So I picked up Jarrett Patterson in the league that I have Gibson in my home league. I'm hoping they'll give Jarrett Patterson Gibson's role and keep McKissic in his own role. And that's because I have Gibson and Patterson and not McKissic. Obviously, if I had J.D. McKissic, I would hope that they give J.D. McKissic a bulk of the work, but that's probably how the backfield is going to shake out. If I had to guess, McKissic sees a slight uptick. Jarrett Patterson will be involved. If you need to start Jarrett Patterson this week, I think he's going to be inside my top 30 running backs or so. If Gibson is indeed out for this game, McKissic will be inside my top 20 though, if Gibson does indeed miss this game with his shin injury. So moving on to the Bengals at Ravens, the next game that we have here. In this game, you are going to start Joe Mixon and you're going to sit all of the Ravens running back. Yes, you're going to sit all of the Ravens running backs, even in by Mageddon. So on the Mixon side of things, of course, he wasn't quite back to his full strength in terms of a snap share, in terms of the percentage of rush attempts and routes that he normally was running before sustaining the injury a couple of weeks ago. But he should be an every week RB1 going forward. Even in a limited capacity, he was still effective. So Mixon, I expect to probably be back to his full workload this week, and he is an every week RB1. I currently have him at my RB6 on the week. So he's a guy that I'm starting with no concerns. On the Ravens side of things, this is a certified mess. This backfield is horrible. The Bengals are a top 5 run defense in DVOA, so this is a tough matchup. I don't want anything to do with these backs in this game. As you guys can see, Latavius Murray led the team in snaps last week, but he did split carries pretty evenly between him, Devontae Freeman, and Le'Veon Bell. Receiving work was also spread out. You have no idea who's going to get the goal line touch, if there even is one, that week. So I am not messing with any of these Ravens backs. Again, if you have to start them, I would choose Latavius Murray, but I don't want to start any of these guys. So moving on to the Panthers at Giants, this one's pretty cut and dry. We have 2 backup running backs in workhorse roles right now. Chuba Hubbard and Devontae Booker are both every week starters, in my opinion. As you can see on the screen, Devontae Booker, even in what was the worst of game scripts, where they got absolutely blown out by the Rams last week, 72% of the snaps, 71% of the touches on the ground, and 55% route participation. And I think by the time the game was out of hand, I think they kind of pulled him in favor of Elijah Penny and some other guys just because the game was out of reach. So Devontae Booker, in what should be a much closer game this week, should be a lot better from a fantasy perspective. He is an every down workhorse with Saquon out. Even in a tough matchup against a vaunted Panthers run defense, he's still in my top 20 for the week. And Chuba Hubbard on the other side of things obviously had a second straight game where he was very good for fantasy. 80% of the rush attempts in both games that he's played thus far without Christian McCaffrey, 65% snap share. Route participation is definitely up there. Did get a goal line carry last week. Still ceding some work in terms of the 2-minute drill and long down and distance to Royce Freeman, but that's fine for me. He plays in a top 10 matchup this week against a Giants defense that has not been good against the the run, and he is my RB11 on the week. So he's a guy that I'm starting with absolute confidence. Both of these guys, frankly, are guys that I'm starting with absolute confidence this week. So the next game we have here, Falcons at Dolphins. In this game, you're going to start Cordero Patterson. You're going to start Mike Davis. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but you could still flex Myles Gaskin. This Dolphins backfield is basically a full-on hot hand committee and a high-risk flex play for Myles Gaskin. But as you guys can see on the screen, he has been getting good usage when he plays well. So I think in this week, when we have all these running backs on bye, it is probably worth your time to start Myles Gaskin as a top 30 running back. Now, again, I wouldn't say this unless we had all these running backs on bye, but I think Gaskin actually presents some upside in a week that there's not much of it at running back. So like I said, it's a hot hand approach. He definitely could be phased out of this game plan if he's not playing well or if the game script goes in a different direction. But if the Falcons are able to score points in this one, I think Myles Gaskin can get it done through the air and get it done on the ground if he's given touches. So with the Falcons side of things, it's a lot more cut and dry, despite Patterson being heavily involved as a gadget option and a guy that I think is still a top 20 running back for me on the week. Davis is still commanding about half the carries and routes and all of the goal line work. So both guys are inside my top 20, facing the second worst defense in the NFL in terms of adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Both of these Falcons running backs, in my opinion, are both guys that you can start with confidence. Moving on from the Falcons and Dolphins to the Jets at Patriots. Start Damian Harris in this game and flex Michael Carter. We know what Damian Harris's role is by now, basically. This is exactly what constitutes a Damian Harris game. They're playing against the New York Jets. Zach Wilson struggled tremendously the first game that they played versus Uncle Bill. This one is set up perfectly for Harris to get a lot of carries to probably get into the end zone in this one. So Damian Harris is a guy I'm starting with confidence right now. He's currently my RB15 in my rankings, so I have no worries starting him. On the other side of things, though, Michael Carter is definitely risky due to the potential matchup that we've seen, what we saw in week 3, I believe it was, where Zach Wilson and the Jets were completely blown out. That is a possibility for Michael Carter, but he's clearly the feature back on this team. The Pats are more susceptible to the run than they are to the pass. As you guys can see on the screen, Michael Carter, before the bye week, was a guy that was consistently getting over 55% of the Jets' rushing attempts, playing about 50% of the snaps, getting some work in the passing game as well. So he's a guy that I think you can absolutely start as a top 25 running back this week, a guy that could be a risky play, a high risk play, but is a guy that definitely could get into the end zone, maybe catch a couple passes in this one. So moving from the 1 p.m. games now to the 4 p.m. games, we have the Eagles at Raiders. In this game, you're going to be starting Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs because both of them are pretty much feature backs. So moving on to the Miles Sanders side of things, we have a guy who's a great buy low right now. Miles Sanders finishes a 2-game stretch coming off of the 2 toughest run defenses in the NFL against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who of course been a great run defense for the last couple of years, and the Carolina Panthers, who've been phenomenal against the run this season. He now faces the Raiders, Lions, and Chargers, who are all top 10 in easiest adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. So I actually do think Miles Sanders is a great start this week. As you guys can see on the screen, his snap share has been going up week in and week out. He's consistently running over 60% of the routes and getting most of the carries. The problem is the Eagles have been basically abandoning the run because they can't run against the teams that they've been playing against. But in these next couple of games, I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think we see Miles Sanders get back on track. On the Josh Jacobs side of things, Josh Jacobs is still getting the usage over Kenyon Drake. Drake just happened to have 2 touchdowns this past week. As you guys can see on the screen, Josh Jacobs, since coming back from injury, has basically been a feature back, getting a majority of the rush attempts, a lot of the routes as well, and just not a lot of targets last week, but he had been getting targets up until that point. So he's a guy, even in a tough matchup, that I'm willing to start as a top 20 running back. Now going from this game to the Lions at Rams, a lot of these 4 o'clock games could be potential blowouts if you ask me, but Darrell Henderson and DeAndre Swift, both of these guys are getting workhorse volume and have been quite good. Swift in one of the worst game environments that you'll ever see. The Bengals completely blew out the Lions last week. DeAndre Swift still found a way to save his day in terms of fantasy, getting into the end zone and catching a number of passes. I can only imagine how good DeAndre Swift would be if this team was even average right now. If they weren't an 0-6 team right now, DeAndre Swift would be a top 3 running back in fantasy, and I firmly believe that right now. 3rd game in a row where DeAndre Swift recorded a season high in snaps. This is his backfield. He's a guy that is playing 75% of the snaps, running over 70% of the routes for a team that is playing from behind all the time. This is a guy that I have full confidence in starting every week as a top 10 running back. Darrell Henderson, on the other hand, is basically the same thing. He's a workhorse as well. He draws the single easiest matchup in the NFL in adjusted fantasy points to running backs. The Detroit Lions have been absolutely putrid against the run this whole season. Joe Mixon showed another reason why they can't stop the run last week. And Darrell Henderson has been a guy, when he's on the field, is a 80+% snap share guy. And again, pour one out for Cam Akers. He probably would have been phenomenal this year. But nonetheless, Darrell Henderson is a guy that I currently have as my RB5 on the week because I think he's just going to go absolutely hog wild in this game against Detroit. Moving on to the Bears at Buccaneers. In this game, you could start Leonard Fournette, you can start Damian Williams, and you can low-end flex Khalil Herbert. So with Leonard Fournette, it's quite simple. I don't really need to talk about him too much. He gets everything except for the 2-minute drill. The only thing that Gio Bernard and Ronald Jones, for that matter, take away from him is Gio Bernard being the 2-minute drill back. And Leonard Fournette is basically a feature workhorse in a Tom Brady-led top 3 scoring offense. So in my opinion, clear-cut top 15 running back the rest of the season, and a guy that you'd be hard-pressed to trade for right now because the manager that has Leonard Fournette is probably not wanting to trade him away. So moving on to the Bears side of things, which is a lot more murky, I'm assuming Damian Williams will be back this week. He was on the COVID list. He's not dealing with an injury or anything like that. So he's the one that I'm starting if both of these guys play. It is a tough matchup, of course, playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we may see him be the passing down back, which is why I favor Damian Williams, because when they were both on the field in week 5, we saw Damian Williams run more routes and we saw him get targeted, whereas Khalil Herbert was not involved in the passing game. So Damian Williams is the guy that I'm starting as a top 30 running back, but I also do think you can start Khalil Herbert inside that top 32 range or so as well, because maybe he's earned a little bit more work in the passing game or in general because of his, his strong play over the last 2 weeks. Now, moving on to the Texans at Cardinals. In this game, you're going to be sitting all the Texans running backs. You never start these guys. This backfield's a complete mess. And I think you can actually start both of the Cardinals running backs. I'm not reading too much into the fact that James Conner did actually outsnap Chase Edmonds last week. I think it was a function of them basically smoking the Browns, blowing the Browns out, and Edmonds nursing a shoulder injury. He was questionable coming into the game. So I do think Chase Edmonds is still the back to own in this backfield. I still think he's a guy that's a top 15, top 18 running back rest of season, and I think is a good buy low target for those of you guys that are dealing with some running back injuries. Maybe you could get Chase Edmonds on the cheap coming off of a bad game. I think both of these guys are in for probably a great matchup. Of course, we saw what Jonathan Taylor did to this Texans run defense last week, and basically what everybody's been doing to the Texans run defense. It's a terrible run defense, and I think they're going to give up a lot to the Cardinals on the ground in this game, particularly to Chase Edmonds, Kyler Murray, and James Conner. So moving from this game to the Sunday night football game, and not great primetime slate this week with the Thursday night game without Baker Mayfield and a number of injuries in the Broncos Browns. Then we have the Colts at 49ers, which is the game that we're about to talk about. And the next game that we'll talk about is also not very exciting. So not the greatest primetime games this week, but nonetheless, Colts at 49ers. In this game, you can start Jonathan Taylor. You can start Elijah Mitchell, but I would probably sit everybody else. Elijah Mitchell in this game returned to his full role in week 6 prior to the bye week. The rush attempts were a function basically of Trey Lance. As you guys can see, he didn't get that much rushing volume, but it's because the quarterback Trey Lance took away a lot. So we'll see if that's a trend going forward, if they're going to run Trey Lance to the tune that they did in week 6. That definitely hurts this backfield overall, and specifically Elijah Mitchell. The Colts are surprisingly the number 1 rush defense in the NFL right now in terms of rush defense DVOA, and they're also top 5 against adjusted fantasy points to the running back position. So this is a tough matchup for Elijah Mitchell, and of course he is dealing with Trey Lance potentially siphoning away rushing volume from him if Trey Lance is indeed the starter for this game. So overall, Elijah Mitchell is the guy that I would start in this backfield, but he's not a guy I have a whole lot of confidence in. Currently ranked inside my top 25, but not much higher than that, even though he is clearly a feature back for his offense. This offensive running game is not as strong with Trey Lance in the backfield because he is going to run the ball a fair bit, and this is a bad matchup. So not overly exciting for Elijah Mitchell, although he is a good start in this game. Jonathan Taylor on the other side of things did see a spike in snaps and in routes last week against the Texans. Hopefully the Colts realize that he is their best chance to win games. Carson Wentz is not going to win them games. Nyheim Hines is not going to win them games. They need Jonathan Taylor running at full force, 20 carries a game if they want to win games, because Jonathan Taylor is their best offensive playmaker. 49ers rank league average against the run, so I think this is going to be another good game for Jonathan Taylor, a guy that I'm absolutely willing to start, currently inside my top 8 at running back, and a guy that I have full confidence in. He's actually my RB4 on the week right now. So final game that we have on the slate here, Saints at Seahawks. In this game, of course, you're going to be starting Alvin Kamara. And on the Seahawks side of things, I honestly can't give a straight answer right now because I don't really know a whole lot of information. I personally don't want to start any Seahawks running back for a couple of reasons. One, Alex Collins left Sunday night with a hip injury. It sounds like Rashad Penny is coming off of the IR, and DJ Dallas and Travis Homer are still involved as well. So this could be a four-way committee between Collins and Penny splitting early down work, and then DJ Dallas and Homer splitting third down work. I don't want to start anybody in this backfield. If Collins is okay, if he is indeed playing in this game because he did suffer a hip injury, I'm willing to start him as a high-end RB3, but in this matchup, this is a tough run defense. This is a top 5 run defense. The New Orleans Saints with a bad quarterback at the helm, no less, to probably not move the ball a whole lot against this tough defense. I'm sitting the Seahawks running backs until we have further clarity on this backfield and in this game. So start Alvin Kamara, obviously, and sit all the Seahawks running backs. That is all, guys. Again, obviously a shorter running back video this week because we do have less games that we're dealing with and a whole lot of injuries that we're talking about. So if you guys did enjoy this video, as always, like the video, comment any of your thoughts down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.